dashboard. And there everything is. So now it will filter to the year that you selected. So this is all 2013, but it will not filter to the region you selected. So even when we come here and we select West, it takes you to the dashboard, but it doesn't filter it to West. You have to do that yourself. So now we have links from sales to sales. Let's make one for profit to profit. Go to sales dashboard, add action, filter. We're going to call this go to profit dashboard. And we're only going to come from the profit table to make this happen. Let's go to profit and let's select our fields. We're going to do the same thing where it's only going to filter it to the year. Now you can see, oh, I started to type in. I didn't show you this before, but you can search text. So I started typing in year and it shows you that under order date you have all these different options. In this dashboard right now, if you remember, we're using the continuous one that is marked by the little calendar. So it knows it's a calendar date instead of just treating it like a discrete field. Okay. Excellent. Go to profit dashboard. And there we go. This visualization, like we said, when it's filtered to just 1 year, isn't quite as useful. But one thing you can do is for West here, we can select both years. I'm going to do it by control clicking. Click, click, go to profit dashboard. And now we've got 2015 and 2016. So that's how you do linking between the two dashboards. If you wanted to be able to include region as well, you could put a note in the tooltip for this, that this doesn't work for region, linking from this area doesn't work, or perhaps you could not have this total line on the same visualization. You could have a separate visualization that shows the total or an area chart instead, and that will let you not have this problem of go to sales dashboard not linking appropriately. So now we're going to create our final dashboard, our segment dashboard, and it's going to use a parameter in it. So we'll get to take a look at parameters on dashboards. So let's rename this. We're going to call it profit and sales by segment. You don't have to name all of your dashboards a description of what they are, but it makes it really nice and easy. And it automatically puts it up here, but if you wanted to change this, you can just come in here and name this whatever you like. And then it will just show up here. So we could call this segment analysis. Click apply or OK, and there it goes. That means this and this does not have to be the same. If we go forward again, segment analysis and profit and sales by segment. That allows you to have some more useful names down here that make it easy when you're looking at them side by side, but have a name to match your dashboard up here. Great, so we're going to make a profit and sales. It's going to be a bars and circles chart, and we're going to bring in our segment that we haven't looked at yet. Consumer, corporate, and home office. And then we're going to look at it segment, and we're going to make a matrix with category, and we get to fill in this space with our visualizations. So we're going to do sales, and it's going to make these bar charts so we can see for technology by consumer, by corporate, by home office. And that is a matrix of bar charts. But we also want to be able to see profit, and right now it's making 2 sets of visualizations, but we want just one, so let's dual axis. And it's automatically changed it to circles. Also, it is not synchronizing the axis now because profit is blue, and these profit is not anywhere near the same amount as sales, which makes sense. You shouldn't have profit that's higher than sales. So let's synchronize our axis. And let's change our sales. Our marks card over here is associated with sales. It's nice and easy when the 2 marks cards are based on a different measure to let you know which one you're affecting. And we'll change that to a bar. And now we have a circle on a bar chart. Now, if we had profit in front of sales, you can see how it's behind. And you can fix that by taking it to the back of sales. Another way you can fix it, say you wanted the profit axis here over here for some reason, you can right click on the axis and put mark type, or move marks to front. Another way to change it. We don't need both of these, so let's not show that header. And we don't need this to be labeled profit because it's for both of them. So the way you get rid of that is actually you click edit axis and then you just erase the title. Oh, and you don't hit reset. You just erase the title and then you close it. So now no title here, but we still have the axis. And we have 3 sets of bar charts across. Excellent. The next chart we're going to build. Oh, so right now it automatically added the colors based on measure names. Measure names is a dimension that is created by Tableau, and it's just what it sounds like. We're coloring it based on the different measure names. One of them's named profit, one of them's named sales. And we know that you can come here, click color, and hit edit colors, and it will open this dialog box. But you can also come here and double click on a color, pops open that dialog box. Let's pick a palette. Let's see. There's a lot of different ones of these. Tableau 20. Let's pick colors from this palette. Profit can be... So you click here, make sure it's highlighted, click the color you want. Click here, make sure it's highlighted, click the color you want. Hit apply. And then you can come to color and make it a little more opaque. Whatever. When you make it more opaque, you start to be able to see through your circles. There are benefits, but also drawbacks to doing that. Anyway, so stick with the Tableau orange and blue. Great, we have our first chart. Our next chart is going to be called Top Customers by Sales. And this is where we're going to use our parameter where we made our top N customers. So let's bring in our sum of sales, make a bar chart for that. And then we're bringing in our set. And so we have our in and our out. We're going to break up our set by our segment, as it's part of our segment analysis. And we'll bring in our customer names. And let's sort it. Excellent. Now you can see that when we sorted it, it didn't take this big guy and put it all the way at the top. It just sorted it each within its own section. Great, and so here we have our in and out, and that's not a super user-friendly title for our users of this dashboard. They're like in and out of top N customers by sales. Maybe we want this to say something a little bit more user-friendly. So let's make a calculated field, and we're going to call it the top N customers label. And we're going to go and say if, and we're going to use our set, top N customers by sales. And since it's an in or out set, it treats this like if it's in top N customers by sales. Then top, we're going to do a string. So it's going to be top, and then we want to use the number that's in our parameter. So we have to convert it from a number to a string, and we have to concatenate them together. In Tableau, you can use a plus sign. Top, and always make sure you have a space between what you're concatenating together. That's something that I tend to forget. Top space customers. So if they pick 20, it'll say top 20 customers. So if it's in the set, then top blank customers. Else, if it's not in the set, we will just call it other. And in Tableau, you always need to end your if statement with an end. Here it tells us our calculation is valid. While we're here, I want to show you a little trick. There's this arrow button here that can give you all of the different functions that are available within Tableau. And it even sorts it out by different categories. So if we didn't know how to make this into a string, we could go to type conversion, we could click on string, and it gives you an example. Also, when you click on a function in here, did you see how it's on date, and then I clicked on string, and I'm like, what does this do? Click on it, and it tells me. So this makes it really useful inside of Tableau. Also, in Tableau, you can make a comment in here. So if somebody's like, what's going on here? You can press dash dash or slash slash and type in, this is a more user-friendly title. Hit OK. And there we go. We have our more user-friendly title. We drag it here. We see our top 20 customers and other. And if we don't want to show this anymore, but we still want it in place, you can right click on it up here and click show header, and it hides it. So that in-out is still happening there. And let's drag it to our filters, and there we have it. We have our top blank customers, and it tells you right there how many. And we need to come here to parameter, right click and click show parameter control, and that's how we can control these changes. So let's set it to 10 at first, and we have it our top customers by sales, but it's interesting to know profit as well. So we have really big sales, but how is their profit doing? So let's drag profit onto color, and you can see this person has a negative amount of profit despite their big sales, so that's important for us to know. And we can change our color like we did previously to go from red to blue, and we can change our center to 0, and now we can see the negatives really quickly. Now, they're not the only one either that have a negative profit, but some of our highest sales. That's great to know. Excellent. Those are our visualizations for the segment dashboard. So let's talk about filters really quick. We have this filter. We won't show the filter itself. We don't want to allow them to show in or out. We just are going to allow them to show how many. But we do want to be able to have them filtered by category. So let's show that filter. And by segment, show that filter. And then we'll have our parameter. Great. Let's make our dashboard automatic, as you probably read right there. The dashboard will resize to fit any screen it is displayed on. That can be really handy, especially if your visualization is really dynamic and can change. However, some visualizations, like this visualization for example, if it gets too squished, you stop being able to read things very well. So automatic has its definite pros and cons. So we're going to bring on our profit and sales by segment, and it already pops up with its legend and total customers by sale, and it pops up with its legends and filters, and it pops up with its parameter. Now I'm going to close that and be like, if you don't see your parameter when you first bring it in, the parameter is affecting this sheet, and you can go to parameters and find it. But parameters are workbook wide, meaning that it's going to exist over here too. It doesn't affect this sheet. However, it's still going to show up there because it could affect, it is available for any sheet, and it's the same. There is no determining what worksheets this affects. This will affect any sheet that it is on. So if I've changed it to 10, and if I come down here and go back to the other visualization that uses it, this is why I should name my sheets. Let's see if I can find it. Nope. Here we are, sheet 13. In sheet 13, we have our top 10. So I've got a 10 and I've got a 10 over there, and if I change it to 20 and I go back to my segment dashboard, it is also changed to 20. So it will affect all sheets always. Very important to know. Great. So here's our visualization. Here are some of the more useful legends. So let's make this floating and put it over by the visualization it matters for. We can do the same thing here. Floating right up here. Floating does not work very well for if you were to make this an automatic dashboard so that the size changes all the time, because floating could end up right on top of your visualization and keep you from being able to see what you need to see. And let's make these affect all the dashboards in the workbook. Again, we don't have to do this for our parameter. It will already affect all the dashboards in the whole workbook. And format these. Another thing you should know is that there are more formatting options for these, including edit title. So it's already named it category automatically, but if you had, like here, oh, this is a great example. Edit title, top end customers, and you could change it to select number of top customers, or something like that. Give it a little more space. And yeah, these floating ones do not shift when you shift things, so it's always good to double check your floating legends. And this is a little bit more user-friendly than the title we made for the developers. And that's using parameters in a dashboard. Today in this video, we learned about an overview of business intelligence and Tableau. We talked about how to install Tableau Public and how to connect to a data source. We also talked about creating calculated fields, like this one. We talked about making sets and parameters. We learned how to make a donut chart and a 2D donut chart. We learned about making dashboards and adding filters to those dashboards. And we also learned about connecting between dashboards. Welcome to Tableau Training Part 2. We will be learning about the topics we discussed in Part 1, live versus extract data sources. We'll talk about joins and unions, and we'll look at table calculations. We'll look at the rank functions, and we'll look at actions, specifically URL actions. We'll talk about reference lines and bands. We'll look into some insights in the data, such as delay analysis. Also, we'll learn how to build a waterfall chart. And then finally, we will learn about level of detail calculations while making 2 different visualizations. In Part 1 of this Tableau training, we introduced Tableau basics, and we learned how to create donut charts and 2-dimensional donut charts, and we learned about linking between dashboards. Now let's discuss the difference between a live connection and an extract connection. First, it's important to note that these different types of connections are not available in Tableau Public. It's always a live connection. And a live connection is where the data will update based on when the source of the data updates. So if you're connected to a database and something in the database changes, then you'll pick up those changes when you open the report, as it will query that database when the report is opened. Whereas an extract connection is extracted creates a subset of the data that improves performance. So when you're looking at it locally on your computer, you have an extract of that data set, that subset of the data, right on your computer or up in Tableau server, depending on where you're looking at it. And it does not update when the database updates. It only updates when your refresh updates it. So without a refresh set for that extract, you won't get the new data. As an example of this, let's say that in our sample superstore, we have Kelly Williams associated with the central region, but that's changed. So let's go ahead and change that. We will change it to Sarah Smith, and we'll save it. Now let's go back to our Tableau workbooks, and you can see we can refresh it over here and see Sarah Smith come in. Over here in our extract, Sarah Smith doesn't come in. If we click to refresh the extract, it doesn't refresh the extract until we navigate to sheet 1. But when we go back to our data source, then we see Sarah Smith coming in. So that refresh can be scheduled, and it could run once a day or once every several hours. But you would need to set up a refresh, or else you would never get Sarah Smith's data coming in. Next, let's talk about joining data in Tableau. So here we have the people table, but let's say we want to join it to our orders information. So I'm going to start with our orders table, and then we're going to pull on people, and Tableau is going to create a join for us, and it's going to choose the column that we would like to join on based on the names in the 2 data sources. So if these 2 data sources didn't have a column that had the same name, then Tableau wouldn't be able to guess what 2 to join on. So we would have to come in and select out of the orders side and the people side what we'd like to join on. And then we have the options to do an inner join, a left join, a right join, and a full outer join. Let's review quickly what these look like. So say we had 2 tables that we wanted to join together. One of them was the student table that had the student names and the key to their grade, and which we could use to look up their grade over here in the grade table, which had the key to their grade and the actual grade, A, B, C, D, F, and incomplete. We can see here that somebody has made a mistake and put in a letter grade instead of the key to the letter grade, and we'll see how that affects what we're looking at. So if we were to do an inner join, that would only take the rows where the join could complete. So we have 1 that could join to 1 just fine, but we don't have 2 and we don't have 3. A doesn't join to anything, so this row would be not included, and then 4, 5, and 6 would all join. So that would look something like this, where we would see Adam. When we grab student from this table and grade from this table, we can see Adam had an A, Beverly had an A, Dale had a D, Elizabeth had an F, and Frank is incomplete. And Charles is missing. Also, you don't see any B or C in this list of grades. For a left join, it's going to take everything from the left table and only the pieces from the right table that apply to the left table. So it looks pretty similar to our inner join, only Charles shows up. So the join wasn't able to complete since A doesn't exist in grade, but we include Charles anyways, and grade becomes null for Charles. It won't put in the grade key because we're not asking for the grade key, we're asking for grade from the grade table. So we try to look up A inside of the grade table, we can't find it, and it returns null. We look up A inside the grade key. Perfect. Right join is like a left join, only it takes everything from the right table instead of the left table. So it grabs all the grades, A, B, C, D, F, and incomplete, and only the rows from the left table that join appropriately. So since Charles doesn't join appropriately, he doesn't show up. We also have B and C showing up even though it doesn't exist in the student table. And it won't be tied to a student because that join wasn't able to complete as it didn't exist over there. And the last one is a full outer join, where it takes everything from both tables whether or not the join is complete. So we have all of the people where the join completes. We also have Charles where the join doesn't complete from the left to the right. And we have B and C where the join doesn't complete from the right to the left. So those are our options in Tableau. Here in our sample superstore data set, you could look and see if there are any regions in the orders table that don't exist in the people table. And that's how you can know what kind of join you want. And so if you want those orders to still show up even though they don't have a region, or their region is not in the people table, that's when you would do a left join. For our purposes, we'll do an inner join. Now let's say we had a second Excel sheet here that had more orders, and you can do a union, which is just adding more orders, by dragging that second orders table right underneath the original orders table. You can see it says there, drag table to union. And that's helpful for if you have an Excel sheet for maybe different years. So say you had a separate Excel sheet for the orders in 2015 and then another one for the orders in 2016. You could pull on your 2015 orders and then drag your 2016 orders right there to union, and it would take these orders and then add the rows instead of the columns for the 2016 orders. For example, we've added people but as a join, and that will first put in all of our orders as columns and then add the columns for our person. But if we were adding more data that fell under the order columns, so it would have the same data, the same order ID, ship date, but we wanted to add more rows, then that would be when you union. Now we're going to take a look at calculations and which ones are calculated on the database side versus which are calculated on the table side. So here we have percentage of total sales split up by subcategory and category. We also have percentage of total sales along table down. So the difference between these two things are one of them is made using a calculated field, which is where we do the sum of sales divided by the sum of fixed sum of sales. This part is called a level of detail calculation. And this calculation, the sum of sales and the sum of the level of detail of sales, which basically makes the database find the total sum of sales regardless of these dimensions we pulled on. So it gives us our total number. So this will be sum of sales for bookcases, and this will be sum of sales for everything. This calculation is done on the database side, whereas this one, percentage of total sales a long table down is what's called a table calculation. It's a quick table calculation of percent of total, and it is done in Tableau. It's processed locally right inside of the table after the aggregations have occurred. There are some pros and cons of doing it this way. So for this percent of total sales, I had to create the table calculation here, and it does the fixed sum of sales where it finds the sum of sales for the entire database, and since it is fixed, it will ignore filters. So for example, I took off both of the sales and I'm just going to put on the percent sum of sales. And let's say we wanted to see how office supplies and technology are as percentages of sum of sales and ignore furniture. So we can grab category and we'll control, click and drag, and we're going to unselect furniture and hit OK. Now it's still taking it out of the total sum of sales including furniture, and so our grand total down here is only 67% instead of 100%. Whereas if we take sales and double click it and it adds it over here on the table, then we right click and do a quick table calculation and click percent of total. This one is doing it out of 100 and these numbers don't match. And that's because it does take into account the filter of category. So let's pull the filter of category off, and we can see that they're both out of 100% now, and each of these take into account the same amount of data since we have no filters here. So if you wanted to take into account the filters on the table, then you need to use a table calculation. However, when you push the information back to the database to do the calculation, it's doing it as part of the query to the data source, and it can save you some time. And so which one of these is faster sort of depends on what data is available already when the original query comes back.
Next, we're going to discuss ranking in Tableau. First, let's add a second data source. So we can do that by coming up to Data and clicking New Data Source. Or you can just click this plus data source right here and click Microsoft Excel. We're going to use this rank example worksheet. Perfect, and it's already pulled in the sheet we want because there's only one sheet. And we'll go to sheet 2, pull on store, pull on sales, and we will rename sheet 2 as rank example. Great, so now we have, here's all of our stores and here are our sales, and if we wanted to rank them based on who had the highest sales to the lowest sales, we could create a calculated field called rank by sales. And we're going to use our rank function and we're going to put in sales. Now we receive this error here, so when we hover, we see what that arrow says. Oh, you can click. And it says all fields must be aggregate or constant when using table calculation functions or fields from multiple data sources. So we learn something unique here that you might not know, is that a rank is a table calculation and it requires it to be aggregated. So we can make sum and put the parentheses around sales and our error goes away. So now we know rank is a table calculation. And we have our box here that expands out and can teach us about what we're using here. So when I click on rank, it will tell us that it returns the standard competition rank for the current row. And it says identical values are assigned an identical rank. So let's see what that looks like. We'll hit OK. We'll double click on rank by sales. And we can see our ranks. So E had the highest sales, so it's 1. D is next, and C and B are tied, 20 and 20. And so they both share the rank of 3, and then because they are 2 of them that share the same rank, we skip 4, and the next one gets 5th place. But now this isn't the only way to rank, so let's make another one of these. We'll click duplicate and edit. Let's erase copy, and we're going to call this rank dense by sales. Double click on rank. Start typing rank again, and we're going to click rank dense. Now the difference here is that rank dense returns the rank where identical values are assigned an identical rank but no gaps are inserted in the numbers. So we'll click OK, double click rank dense, and you can see instead of going 1, 2, 3, 5, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So it doesn't include that gap. Now let's give them a little bit more space here. And maybe I want it to be in the order I created it. So these measure values are defining what's going to happen up here. So we can take sales and put it at the top. And that'll move sales to the front. And put rank dense at the bottom. So now we can see sales. We can see rank by sales. Rank dense by sales. Now let's duplicate. And look at the next one. We have rank modified next, and change the name here. You notice that I receive an error, and that's because that name already exists. Tableau won't allow you to use the same name, and it will give you that error. So those errors can be pretty helpful in finding out what's going on. Hit apply and OK, and then double click rank modified by sales. And now we can see the difference here. Let's go back here and look at what it says here. Click on rank modified, and it says it returns the modified competition rank, where identical values are assigned an identical rank. But what happens instead is instead of both receiving 3 for third place, they both receive 4, which is the lower of the options. So if we were going by rank and we just arbitrarily decided that this one's third place and this one's fourth place, then they both receive the same rank here, but they receive the higher of the 2 options, whereas this one receives the lower of the 2 options. And let's do one more. Duplicate. Edit. Erase copy. And we're going to do rank unique, and let's change the name to rank unique. Perfect. And now this is going to give it a unique ranking even when they share the same number. So we'll hit apply, OK, double click rank unique, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what it's doing is, let's quickly look here. So rank by sales. We haven't talked about this yet, but you can choose to rank it ascending or descending. That means that do we want to rank it based on whether, you see here it says ascending or descending, and that's how you will define. So it defaults to descending, and it's saying the biggest is the best. So for sales, that's accurate. So what it's doing is biggest down. Now here, it has to decide which one to give 3 and which one to do 4. And it's doing that based on the ASCII values of the store. So it's looking at more information on the row. And since uppercase B comes before lowercase c, uppercase B is getting the 3, even though they both have 20 for sales. Let's go back now to our orders data, and we'll make a new sheet. And now we're going to talk about actions in Tableau. We've talked about actions briefly before in our Tableau training video for beginners. So if you want to see the introduction, you can go and look there. Also, if you want to follow along with our data sets, you can comment below and ask, and the Simply Learn team will get you that data set. So let's make a chart where we're going to look at category. So we'll drag category onto columns, and then we're going to look at sales. So we'll drag sales onto rows, and it will create 3 bar charts for us. And we're going to call this sales by category. Now let's make a second chart that we will use together, and we'll bring category onto columns, and we'll bring subcategory onto columns. And let's bring sales onto rows again. And let's take subcategory and bring it on to color. And that makes each subcategory its own color. And we'll call this sheet sales by subcategory. So now back to sales by category. Here you can make a worksheet action where we're going to move from the sales by category sheet to the sales by subcategory sheet and also filter down that sheet to only the category we want to see. So click filter and we can name this filter go to subcategory. And we're going to do this filter on select. So this name won't be seen except for in our actions list. And what sheets do we want to affect? We're going to have sales by category show up. One thing to note here, it is only showing the sheets for it to affect based on the ones that are using this data source at this point. So you can see we have 4 sheets down here, but it's only showing 3 sheets. And that's because rank example, if you recall, is using the rank example data source. So you can click here and you can see all the sheets, or you can see the other data source. If we click rank example, it will show the rank example data source. So we just want sales by category to be the source sheet, and the target sheet, we want it to be sales by subcategory. So on select, we want it to be sales by subcategory. We're going to use all the fields available to create this filter and hit OK. So now we have our go to subcategory on select. We'll hit OK again. And let's make this a little wider so we can see. And so when we click on furniture, it will take us to only furniture of the sales by subcategory. We go back to category and click on office supplies. Now we just see office supplies. And this is a way to make Tableau drill to a lower level. Great. So we have those. Now let's duplicate this sales by category sheet. And let's see if we go to worksheet and we go to actions, you can see that we have the action here go to subcategory that still exists on our duplicated sheet as well. So you can see it's affecting both sheets, sales by category and sales by category too. Let's say we don't want that, and we can unselect sales by category too. And hit OK, and hit OK. Now when we go to worksheet actions, you can tell that it's not affecting that sheet. So if we come and click technology, nothing should happen. But we go to sales by category and click technology, it'll take you to the technology subcategory. Great. So we have our sales by category 2. Let's bring it to the end. Rename it. We're going to call it sales by category stacked, because we're going to take subcategory here and drag it onto color. And now we can see our different subcategories in the colors there. Now we can take a look here and sort by subcategory based on sum of sales. And now you can see that it is the biggest sales at the bottom for each subcategory. That's just a way that I like to view it. So let's do a highlight action, and we're going to do it on a dashboard. So let's take sales by subcategory and look at it over top of, or sales by category stacked, over top of sales by subcategory. So we want both of those. Let's make our dashboard automatic for testing purposes. And we'll go to dashboard, we'll click create actions. So we're going to add an action. It's going to be a highlight action. Highlight sales by subcategory. And we are going to have the sales by category stacked be the source sheet, and the sales by subcategory be the target sheet for all fields. Okay, okay. And on select, you can highlight your chart there and see where it falls inside of the other visualization. A cool thing you can do is you could select office supplies here and it will highlight all of office supplies, or if you drag and select a couple of them, it will show you those. So you're just like, I want to see all these small ones, or I want to see this one and these small ones, or whatever. then it will highlight the ones that you drag and select. Now, this is also true of our sales by subcategory and sales by category. So when we clicked on technology, it filtered to just technology. And we'll undo that. And when we drag and click office supplies and technology, we get office supplies and technology. Now, if we go back to the dashboard, we can see that this dashboard is now filtered also to office supplies and technology, and that's because we're using the same sheet. And when you navigate away from that sheet, it doesn't mean that your filter goes away. So when I clicked undo, that's when it caused the filter to go away. So if you're going to have two things affect that sheet, just remember that just because you navigated away from what you selected doesn't mean that what you selected goes away. That filter will stay there. And it shows up right here. And if we pull it off, everything goes back to normal. However, the action is still there. So when you click on it, it comes back. Now let's take a look at the last kind of action, which is a URL action. So we're going to make a map based on state. So I'm going to double click state, and it's going to build out my map. Let's change it to a filled map by clicking map up here. And we're going to take sales and put it onto color. So now it's colored based on the darkest is the highest sales. We're going to put state onto label, so you can see the state name, and we're going to put sales onto label, so we can see the sales amount. Let's quickly change our default property for sales, so that it always shows up as currency. And we're going to lose the decimal places, so it'll, by default, show up with a $sign, and so on. Great, so now we have our sales map, and we're going to create a worksheet action. Now the difference between a worksheet action and a dashboard action is that a worksheet will only affect the worksheet and a dashboard will only affect the dashboard. And so when we created our worksheet action on sales by category, if we were to pull sales by category onto the dashboard, that action won't transfer over. You'll need to make a dashboard action. So we're going to make a go to URL action. We're going to have it on menu. We're going to call it wiki. And it's going to only affect our new sheet, sheet 6, which we should rename. And we're going to have a URL in here, so this will take us to Wikipedia, and then whatever you put at the end of the Wikipedia link, it will take you to that page on Wikipedia. So we're going to take state and add it to the end of that link. And now to test the link, you can just click test link, and it will take a random value and show you what it will look like. So now that's how we know that we have our link set up. Click OK, click OK. Let's rename our sheet to URL filter by state. And so when we click on Texas, okay, back to URL filter by state. Let's go to our worksheets and go to our actions, and on the go to subcategory, it is also affecting this URL filter by state because we didn't unselect it. Now, to keep that from being a problem, we're going to just come here and sales by category be the only sheet, and that way it won't auto-select new sheets as you create them. So, we'll no longer have that problem. You click on Texas and nothing happens except for it highlights that one only. That's how it should be. But when we hover on Texas and wait long enough, oh yeah, on click, sometimes you just have to hold still. It'll come up with our little link here, and we click on wiki, and it will open up our browser with the Wikipedia page for Texas. This can become really handy in the event that you have data that maybe has an order ID, and you can take that order ID and insert it into a URL in your system so that it can take you to your web interface page for that order. Here it's helpful for if we wanted to learn more about the state of California, which it can have information about the languages spoken and population, which can be helpful when we're looking into our sales information. Another way this can be useful is by showing the web page right inside of Tableau. So let's make a dashboard. Change our size to automatic, and let's pull in URL filter by state. If we go to dashboard actions, you can see there are no actions for this dashboard yet, so we're going to add a go to URL action on select. And since it's on select, the name of this URL won't show up, but it will show up in our list here, so it's nice to name it something unique. Let's put in our Wikipedia page, and it'll take us to state. So we'll hit OK, OK, and now when we click on Oklahoma, it'll open up a page for Oklahoma. But let's unselect Oklahoma. If we drag on web page from the objects here, you don't even have to enter anything for your URL, you just hit OK. And now we have the bottom half of the screen is a web page, and when we click on Oklahoma, instead of taking us to Oklahoma in a separate thing, it'll take us to Oklahoma right here in the visualization. So we'll change it to Texas, and this will change to Texas. If you unselect, it leaves the page there based on the one that you had just selected. Next, we're going to take a look at reference bands and lines. So let's make a new sheet, and we're going to call it reference lines. And so a reference line is found on the analytics pane, and it is something that comes and draws a line on your visualization based on the data on the screen. So let's make our visualization. We'll do our category and subcategory again, and we'll double click on sales, and it brings it onto text. So that's not what I want. So let's do sales onto rows, and we have our bar charts. And we'll talk about the difference between a cell, a pane, and the table. So when we go to analytics and we go to drag our reference line onto our visualization, it says you can add the reference line for the whole table, for a pane, or for a cell. So if we take our subcategory and drag it onto color, since the subcategory is our lowest level, it's going to define our cell. So each one of these, if we drag our reference line onto cell, each one of them gets a reference line. You see how it added those on? This is our dialog box. We will look at that in just a moment. So let's remove that. If we take reference line and put it onto pane, that's going to be similar to having category onto color. So each of these different colors is now a pane. Reference line onto pane, and you see how we get reference lines based on each pane. So let's undo that. And now if we take category off and everything is all one color, and we take reference line and put it onto table, now we have our reference line for the whole table. Great, so we're going to find out the average for each section. So I'm going to take category and put it back onto color, and we'll take reference line and put it onto pane. Now we have our reference line. It's based on the computation of average, and it's using the value of sum of sales. So since it says sum of sales here, you might think that it is taking the reference line and putting it at the sum of the sales, but that's not what's happening. It's just using our aggregated version of sales to figure out the average. So instead of taking each individual sale that makes up the bookcase section, it's taking the sum of sales for the bookcase section and comparing it to the sum of sales for chairs. So it's taking an average across these added up sections. We could also have it be total, where it's adding all of these up and it makes that total line. The sum line is the same as total in this case. A constant, which is where you get to define the value, and so if we wanted it to be 200,000, there it is. Let's go back. There we are, back to where we were. Constant, minimum, which shows you the minimum for each section, the maximum for each section, or the average, or the median. So let's stick with average, and now you can see it's labeling the line as average. We could also have it label the line as the value, so now we can see that the average is this amount of dollars. Or you can choose custom, and then you can put something in here. Like maybe we wanted the computation, a colon, and then the value, average, this amount. You can also have show recalculated line for highlighted or selected data points. That means when you click on a section, it will recalculate the average just for what you've selected. We'll hit OK. And so in that case, when we click on tables, you can see our recalculated average line. So the average for tables, for just tables, is the sum divided by the number. So the sum of tables is 206,966 divided by 1 is still 206,966. So selecting just tables isn't really helpful. But if we wanted to know the average of tables, and we'll control click appliances, and we'll control click binders, oh, there we go. All three of those are selected, and we can see the average of those three, which is this line. You could also select like this and see your new average. Oh, and it's doing the average independently. So, select these guys, and now we see the average of just those 5 categories. And those are reference lines. Now, let's duplicate this sheet, and I'll show you how to delete a reference line. So, we'll rename this to reference bands. Click on this reference line, right-click, and click remove, and it takes it off. We have the same thing for reference bands as we had with reference lines, where you can have it be for the whole table, per pane, or per cell. So let's do a reference band for the whole table. So it's doing entire table, and it's taking from the minimum to the maximum. Now we could change the minimum to be the average to the maximum, and now that will highlight the whole table. Everything that's above the average becomes highlighted. And if you wanted to change it, you could do the minimum to the average. But let's go to average to maximum. And then you can change things like you can add lines. So we have a line for the average or the maximum. You can make it thinner, you can make it dotted. You can change your fill, so maybe if you don't want it to be quite that dark, you can change it to be a little bit of a lighter color of gray. And you can have show recalculated band for highlighted, or you can remove that, and that way when we highlight stuff, everything just stays where it belongs for the entire table. And that's how you create a reference band. Reference bands and reference lines can be really handy in making several different kinds of visualizations, such as bullet charts. If you have any questions about that, please comment below and the Simply Learn team will get back to you. Now let's do another analysis on average days to ship. And for this one, we're going to look at it by state, and we're going to look at it by ship mode. And so we'll take average days to ship and put it on columns. And now we can see the average days to ship by first class, same day, second class, or standard class. And you can see how they differ. So let's change the order of these really quick. If we come up here to ship mode and we click sort, and we click manual, we can have same day above first class, so that it kind of goes in order of priority. So same day, first class, second class, standard class. There we go. And now we have it in order of what you might expect and priority. And now we're going to create a calculated field that we will use to do a sort of conditional formatting. And we will name it delay analysis. Great. So let's do if the average days to ship is less than or equal to 2, then we'll have it return the words shipment early. So if we want to press enter there, that won't cause any problems to our calculation. So you can press enter, or you could have extra spaces and it won't, Tableau will ignore those. So this allows us to format our calculated field in a way that's easy to read. So if it's less than 2, then they're going to call it an early shipment. Else if average days to ship is greater than or equal to 5, then shipment late. And else if, let's get the rest of them. And average days to ship is not less than 2. Greater than 2 and less than 5, then on time. 2 words. On time. And now you can see we have an error here. It says expected end to match if, and that means that we don't have an end at the end of our if statement. If statements always have to have an end. Okay, let's hit apply. And let's grab our delay analysis and put it onto color. And it has on time as blue, early shipment as orange, and shipment late as red. We can double click on the color and we can change shipment early to green. And now we can see the best ones, the on-time ones, and the ones that stand out as late. And standard class happens late a lot. It's interesting to see that on average, the District of Columbia has second class as a late shipment. You can see that all of these share the same axis size, so they all go from 0 to 6, even though this one never gets that close to 6. If we click Edit Axis, you can choose if you want that to be the case. So it's like right now, all of them use uniform axis range for all rows and columns, and that's really nice because it's easy to compare Colorado to Colorado to Colorado. If you change it to independent axis for each rows, you can see now this one only goes from 0 to not even 1, whereas this one goes from 0 to 6. And you can compare it with color, but you can no longer compare it with size across all of these different categories. So uniform axis range is the default in this case, and we will keep it that way. So now we have a quick analysis of our delays. We're now going to build a waterfall chart based on profit. So we'll call this our profit waterfall. And we'll take a look at what a waterfall looks like at the end and talk about how it works. So after we build it, we'll talk about some of the benefits of having a waterfall chart. So what we're going to do is build it over time. For this visualization, we're just going to look at the year of 2014. So I'm going to filter it to the order dates for 2014. And then we're going to take our order date and bring it onto columns, and we're going to look at it by month, but we're going to look at it by our discrete month. So you can see that I chose the one that has month and year, and then I chose discrete. And then we're going to take profit and put it onto rows, and we're going to change it from profit to our running total of profit. So you can see that it takes January and then it adds February to it. And so it's always getting bigger when we undid it. Sometimes there's up and down. So back to, we have our running total where it will sum January and February for the February mark, and then sum January, February, and March for the March mark. If I take profit and put it here, you can see January is negative 3,000 and February is positive 2,000. But here, it's the sum of those, which is negative 467. Take that back off. We're going to change our marks to a Gantt bar. And now we're going to duplicate profit and edit what we have. We're going to call this negative profit. And it's going to be just profit with the negative sign in front. Oh, it looks like I've done this before. So now we have a new name because I added a space at the end. So hit apply. And let's delete the old one. Okay, so now we have our negative profit. Just to look at it, it's just minus profit. And we're going to use that to determine the size of the Gantt bar. So what it does is it takes where the line was and it adds the size of it to be the size of profit. But because the line was at the top and we didn't want to build the profit up, we had to change it to negative profit, so it would build it down. So here, the line was down here because it was so low negative, and we added negative profit. And then let's take profit and put it on color. And so you can see where profit is negative, it turns it orange. And where profit is positive, it turns it blue. So what's happening here? What we can do now is we can see our total sales at the end and how we got there. So for the first month, we were at 0 when we started and we went down to negative 3,000. The next month, we were at negative 3,000 when we started and it grew up to be almost back to 0. And then we can see that from there on out, we grew up each month, and you can see how much each month contributed. Our biggest contributors are November and March, November being a little bit bigger. And you can see where we started at the beginning of that month and where we ended. And that's how a waterfall chart works. So it lets you go through over time and see exactly where our problems were,